Now, let's go further north on our continent. Libya's first presidential election has once again been postponed. The Electoral Commission in that country says while it's technically ready, there are still some details to work through. This means a delay in reaching stability for a country that's still in turmoil since long-time leader Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown in 2011. A new date has now been proposed, which is the 24th of January. Now, let's speak to the editor of the publication Africa Confidential, Patrick Smith, about what's happening there. He's joining us now virtually from London. Patrick, good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us here on this Christmas Eve afternoon on ENCA. You're looking at this developing uncertainty around the polls, whether or not they'll happen in Libya. As I understand, on the ground, Libyans have reacted with a mix of anger and hopelessness.
Yeah, good afternoon, Dan. Yeah, I think they're very frustrated because there was a real hope for peace. As you say, the country hasn't known much peace or stability since the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi 10 years ago. It broke into factions in 2014. So you had the eastern faction based in Tobruk and the western faction based in Tripoli, with external powers like Turkey backing the government in Tripoli and Egypt and United Arab Emirates backing a rogue general known as Khalifa Haftar based in Tobruk. So the agreement earlier this year to have an interim government and to hold elections on the 24th of December was a real milestone. There was so much hope that this was the time when Libya would get it back together again, would have elections, and then move into an era of stability. And that was the great hope. The date actually is also significant. It's not just because it's Christmas Eve. In fact, Christmas Eve doesn't mean a hell of a lot in Libya, you might imagine. I think 99.9% of the population are Muslim. But it is the anniversary. In fact, it's the 70th anniversary of Libya's independence. So it had a huge resonance that this election would be on the 24th of December 2021, 70 years after independence, 10 years after the overthrow of Gaddafi, and it would open a new chapter for the country. But that just hasn't happened. But the fact that it hasn't happened, is the explanation for the mass frustration of people. They really wanted this to be a turning point, and they could move, so they could move on.
Yeah, I've seen other reports saying that there are some concerns politically, some disagreements among the various factions that you have so eloquently described as the eastern side and the western side. But some people believe that maybe the presidential poll should not be the first poll to happen in Libya. It should be, firstly, a parliamentary one, but based on an agreed constitution, which currently does not exist.
Exactly. Now, that's you're getting to the reasons why the election couldn't hold today, because the parliamentary speaker proposed some electoral laws, which were then rejected by the High Council of State. And as you say, those electoral laws were about the order of the election. Most people thought it would be much better to have the election for the MPs and the other functionaries before you have the presidential elections, because if you have the presidential elections first, really the person who wins that then more or less picks the rest of the government, and it's a kind of winner-takes-all situation. And the whole principle of this new power-sharing agreement in Libya was to have some sort of balance, regional balance and political, ideological balance in the country. So they couldn't agree on the rules. They couldn't actually agree on the final list of candidates. That was the other big problem. So that's why they've been postponed for a month. But I think I have to say a lot of people don't even think that they're going to be ready in a month, because the election rules are meant to allow a month for campaigning, and campaigning hasn't even started.
Now, Patrick, just on that point, a month, and there's so much to do to get things right. The divide between the eastern and the western factions, let's call them that currently, and a lack of a foundation like a constitution might delay things further. That would heighten the risk that war might break out again. Or am I being melodramatic?
I don't think you are at all. There are all sorts of militias that grew up in the wake of Gaddafi. Gaddafi ran a kind of, an autocratic regime, which did at least have the military forces unified under his command, or the command of his family, shall we say. After his overthrow, that broke up and they splintered. And there were various powerful militias grew up in the west and the east of the country. You've probably heard of the Misrata militia and all the rest of it. Now, on top of that, you get foreign forces. There are about 60,000 Russian forces came into the country 6,000 Russian forces came into the country at one stage with the Wagner group, the mercenaries who are accused of being extremely close to Vladimir Putin, but it is a private company. They came in on the side of Khalifa Haftar in the east of the country, and then Turkey had its own militia, which was backing the regime in Tripoli. All these militias are still live. They have bases in the country, and the fear is that the postponement of the elections will then trigger some sort of clashes between the rival militias. So it's a very, very difficult situation. That is a real risk. I mean, you have to weigh that against the risk of having elections that are really unsatisfactory, and you can almost be certain that the result of those elections is going to be disputed. So it's either way, you've got a risk of militia clashing over the elections, or in the other case, the non-elections.